From Washington now is Sebastian Gorka, who is the Deputy Assistant to the President of the United States, and Katie Waldman from the news website Slate. Very nice to have you both. Sebastian Gorka, the sacking of the Attorney General Sally Yates has set the bar quite high, hasn't it? Does the President intend to get rid of everyone who refuses to execute his ideas?
That's a bit of a straw man, an argument from extremists I wouldn't expect from the BBC. Let's not get carried away here. Sean Spicer simply sent a message in his masterful press conference yesterday afternoon where he said, look, we have a new president. If there are members of the bureaucracy who don't wish to execute the policies of the new president, well, in a private company, those individuals would have to resign or be fired. So the issue is, does somebody that works as a federal employee wish to implement the policies of the new president? It's that simple.
I'm sorry you find me extreme. There's some, 900 people who've signed notices or petitions saying that they disagree with these executive orders. Will you actually make moves to get rid of them all?
That's not my call. That's not my job to do.
Should President Trump do that now?
Should a CEO get rid of people who don't want to work in his company and obey by his company's rules?
So that's a yes,
what would you do? If the BBC had employees that completely acted in ways flagrant to the governor's requests and his actual policies, what would happen to them?
So the answer is yes then. She assumed that she was in her job to uphold the law and that she couldn't uphold the law by carrying out his demands. So if that is what you're saying...
I think she fell a victim to the politicization of national security. The fact is, this executive order, is based upon an Obama identification of 7 nations of primary concern to the United States when it comes to immigration. So we're acting on analysis from the last administration.
Let's bring in...
We simply wanted to make sure that there is no further threat, and 109 people were slightly delayed out of 325,000 entering America on Saturday. If that's too much for somebody to execute that mission, well, they will pay the consequences.
And there was no national emergency and you had to row back on key elements.
Not required.
Let me just bring in, if I can, Katie Waldman. The Reuters poll tonight shows, whatever you think the Liberals in the airports are saying, that the majority of Americans agree with this ban.
Yes, that's kind of a shocking number, and I'd just have to say also that the job of a civil servant in this country is not just to obey the whims of the Roman emperor, of the leader. It's to uphold the Constitution, and there have been very strong and persuasive arguments advanced that show that this executive order is not constitutional, is very contrary to the American idea as it's been sort of broadcast around the world. And I think many Americans are quite ashamed that our new president has moved so quickly. Yes.
But Katie, Roman emperors were not elected, and Donald Trump made very clear on the campaign trail that this is what he was going to do. It can come as no surprise, right?
Yes, and I think that team has been very effective at sort of creating a mandate out of a very tight race and assuming that the electoral victory justifies sort of any action that they can dream of doing.
Right.
That was a campaign promise.
Sebastian, but you may make promises of the campaign which are chaos. In reality, you've had to pull back on key elements.
How is 109 people chaos? Could you explain that to me, please?
Green cards, military translations.
Mildly delayed.
Right. So are you saying this has gone according to plan? Broadly, this is what you want?
Absolutely. I just met with General Kelly, who is the new Secretary of Homeland Security, and he told me that absolutely like clockwork, what the left-wing media was presenting was absolutely and utterly fallacious. The idea that principals weren't consulted, that agencies weren't brought into the decision-making.
Does it matter to you
from whole cloth?
If leaders around Europe and around the world think that this is the efforts of a dictator gone mad?
It matters to us that people are being mowed down in mass numbers in Nice. People are being massacred on the streets of Paris, of Brussels, and we don't want that to happen here. That's what matters to us. And anybody who uses that kind of language on a duly elected, democratically chosen representative and head of government really should have their credentials examined very closely.
Katie Waldman, and this is part of it, isn't it, that whenever there are, protests, whenever there are placards, whenever, if you like, the left gather, this plays really into Trump's hand. This is what he wants to see because he knows the rest of the country's delighted.
Yes, well, I think that's a very good point. He's a wonderful showman, and you can even see in the way that he's rolling out his announcement of his Supreme Court nomination later tonight. It's 8 o'clock prime time. The rumor is that he has his two finalists both appearing in the White House. It's going to be great entertainment, I'm sure.
So is there any Supreme Court choice that the Democrats could accept?
My sense is that Democrats are really hoping that Congress, which sort of distorted the makeup of the court by not even considering Barack Obama's nomination of Merrick Garland, will wait until another vacancy opens up and then evaluate both Garland and whoever Trump chooses to nominate at that point.
Sebastian Gorka, we will find out probably for us tomorrow morning who the Supreme Court choice is by Donald Trump. But let me ask you this. Whilst governments around the world are trying to work out President Trump's strategy, there is the question of the state visit. Now, if that gets pushed back a year, 18 months, is that still acceptable to President Trump?
I'm not going to speak directly for the president. The fact is the visit of Theresa May that just happened a few days ago went superbly, and as a result I expect everything to go along swimmingly.
You know there's a petition of more than 1 million people who don't want him to come and see the Queen.
Absolutely, I know that, but I know there's also a duly elected government.
A duly elected government? Are you talking about the British one or about the American one?
Yes, the British one that is going to invite the duly elected chief executive of the United States.
Katie,
if we keep government policies hostage to petitions, then everybody would say, I don't want to pay any taxes, and there'd be a petition for zero taxes. That's not how a representative democracy functions or a republic.
Katie, this is what the left will come up against time and again within the Trump administration. This is a man who was voted in by a credible electoral system.
Yes.
A populist who is enacting the things he said and was democratically elected to do. Where do you go from here?
I think Trump speaks the language of sort of, as I said, showmanship and theater, and I think that if people protest, he can see that there is a lot of opposition, a lot of resistance.
But protest by, for example, walking out, boycotting congressional hearings. Orrin Hatch called them idiots today, and you can see the point.
I do see the point, and I must say I'm a little bit at a loss. It's very dismal. I think the mood in a lot of places that are predominantly Democratic as opposed to Republican is discouraged and searching. But I am encouraged by the example of Elizabeth Warren, people in government who are not rolling over to this and who seem to be sort of, I don't know, marshalling their resources.
We've run out of time, but thank you both very much indeed. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Newsnight now. This is our new place for fresh ideas and original opinions. You won't agree with everything they say, but that's sort of the point.